exceptionally rare for a high-ranking mafioso to agree to cooperate with journalists. The shrewd criminal strategist, whose intelligence had been lauded by more than one police officer, even believed he'd supply us with too much material for a single book. According to him, we need to write two. For the past several months, he'd known his life was in danger. So had we. We'd therefore decided it would be less risky to hold our meetings for the project in a far-off location across the Atlantic in late August 2019. It might be him. I have a funny feeling, I told Félix over the phone after examining Maxim's photo. We immediately reached out to our police contacts to try to identify the victim as quickly as possible. Previously, I'd had a source who was a card-carrying member of a biker gang. This was during the bloody war between the Hells Angels and the Rock Machine over control of the Quebec drug trade back in the 1990s. Our first interaction had narrowly averted disaster. I'd written an article in the Journal de Québec about a financial dispute between the man and a city's government, and he'd called me up to give me a piece of his mind. I think I was pretty fair, was the gist of my response over the phone. I didn't publish your home address in the article. If the police turn up at your door to arrest you, that might be a different matter. I'd immediately regretted my arrogance, but luckily, the tone of the conversation softened. Our discussion became more respectful, and we ended up talking for several minutes. The next day, the biker had called me back to give me his pager number. Over the following years, he'd passed along various bits of behind-the-scenes information on the Quebec Biker War, which had left more than 160 dead. Why? Most likely because he and his gang thought my articles would serve their own interests at the expense of the rival gang. My first encounter with the mafioso I thought I'd recognized in the photo had been very different. I hadn't been as patronizing as I'd been with the biker, for one thing. There had been occasional flickers of something very intimidating in the intense gaze of this man of Italian origin who'd insisted on being treated with respect. The last time I'd spoken to the man Félix and I referred to as the source was the Friday before that election day morning. He'd insisted on meeting again here in Montreal to pass along some documents. He'd also told us he was planning to leave the country in the very near future for an indefinite period. I've got to clear out until this blows over, he said, his plane ticket already in hand. A few days earlier, our police contacts had strongly advised us not to risk another meeting with the mafioso, who was living on borrowed time. If a killer tailing him was ever lucky to eliminate him, they wouldn't hesitate to liquidate anyone with the misfortune of being in his company to avoid leaving witnesses to the crime, we'd been told more than once. We'd wisely followed this advice. On our return from Spain, we'd limited our interactions to over the phone. The man had called me 3 days before that fateful Monday. As we'd said our goodbyes, I'd wished him a nice weekend and told him to take care of himself. He wasn't the type of mafioso to walk around surrounded by bodyguards, but he took plenty of precautions to cover his back. It hadn't been enough. At 11:40 a.m., I received a brief text message from a police source. I was still staring at my phone screen in disbelief when Félix called me and repeated the same 2 words I'd been reading over and over. It's Andrew. Eric Thibault. Chapter 1. Are you impressed? Journalism is a thrilling job. But while it's full of adventure, it can also prove challenging, especially when it comes to the confidentiality of journalistic sources. This key aspect of the job poses moral and ethical dilemmas. In Quebec and the rest of Canada, this sacrosanct principle of confidentiality is enshrined in law. Put plainly, it protects the identity of journalistic sources, since journalists are often required to grant their sources anonymity to obtain sensitive and confidential information. Eric and I had struck this type of deal with Andrew Scoppa.